Okay, now let's bring in the other resistor, which will be the 20 kilo ohm resistor. I will click again on the resistor button. Here is the list of the different resistor. Let me scroll down to the 20 kilo ohm resistor. I will place it here. However, you can see that this resistor, the 20 kilo ohm resistor, is placed horizontally. We need it vertically so that we can connect it in the similar way as shown in the lab manual. So how can we rotate it? We simply click this component and press Ctrl R. When I press Ctrl R, this component is rotated. It is rotated by 90 degrees. And now it is in our preferred position. Okay, now fortunately, Multisim has already labeled our resistors according to what we have in our circuit, R1 and R2. If this was not the case, we would have to double click on the resistor and go to the label tab to change the label accordingly. We don't have to change it now. So this is just for your information that if you want to change the label of any component, you can change it by double clicking on it and going to the label menu. It is important that you have to move to the label tab to change the name. Okay, very good. Now let's move forward. We will now place the remaining components. First, let us get the voltage source. To access the different types of sources and grounds, we will have to press the sources icon right here, this one. Remember that right now this window shows the components, okay, like resistors, capacitors and inductors. If you want to access the sources, we will have to press this button. When I press this button, another window opens up. Again, for some reason it is shown in the other screen on my computer. I will drag it back here. Okay, it's here. Okay guys, so this is a small window showing different kinds of sources. For example, here you can see that this one is a DC voltage source. Okay, and there are some dependent sources also. This is a current source and so on. Anyways, so in this experiment, we are dealing with DC voltage source. Let me click on it and I will place the DC voltage source right here. By default, the value of the DC voltage source is 12 volts. However, for this experiment, I need a 30 volt source. So what I would do is, I would double click on this voltage source and I will go to the value tab here, value tab, and I will change the value from 12 to 30. Now the value is 30. I will move to the label tab so that I can change the label of this source. So the label that is assigned to this voltage source is V1 and it is done by Multisim automatically. I would prefer to label it as VS, just like in our lab manual. So I would update it like this, VS, and I will press OK, and you can see that our voltage source has been updated. We also saw that the ground component is available in the sources category right here, this one. So we'll click on it and we will place it somewhere here. Now we have all the components that we need in our workspace and we are now ready to connect them. In order to connect one of the component to the other one, we will have to bring our mouse pointer right next to one of the terminal of the component. For example, if I want to connect this voltage source with this resistor, I would bring my mouse pointer either to this terminal or to this terminal of R1. You can see that the shape of the mouse pointer will change as I come closer to a terminal of any of these components. So let us say that I want to connect R1 with VS. So let's start from here. I will bring my mouse pointer here and then left click. I will left click and release the mouse button. Please, this is important to note that I don't have to actually drag. I will just release the mouse button, and wherever I move my mouse, I will see this dotted line which actually shows the path where a wire will be placed. Okay, so I will now move this pointer to the terminal of R1 where I want it to be connected. I will click it again, I will left click it again and then release. Okay, you can see this red line. This is actually a wire that is being connected from the top terminal of VS to the left terminal of R1. I will repeat this process and connect R1 with R2. I will connect R2 with the source, and this ground will be connected somewhere here. Now you can see that there is a small solid circle here. This is called junction. Remember at the beginning of the lab I told you that Multisim uses a slightly different terminology for nodes that are connected to more than two components. So here this is a junction, and this is the point where three of the circuit components are connected. What are those three components? This voltage source is connected to this resistor and also with this ground. So these are the three components that are connected together at this junction. Okay guys, so now we have our circuit just like the lab manual. Sometimes it is important that we show the grid points on this workspace. In order to make the grid points appear, we right click on the workspace and we select show grid. Sometimes it is also important for us to know the node names. Okay, so what I would do here is I would right click and go to show here and select show node names. When I will press OK, these names will appear. These are the names of the nodes that have been assigned by Multisim automatically. So 0 for this node, 1 for this node. Again, remember that a node is a point where two or more components join. So here this one is a node, this is another node, and all of them have been identified and labeled automatically by Multisim. Okay, very good. So now we are ready with our circuit and we can make some measurements. In order to make the measurements, we will have to place multimeter in this circuit. Okay, now what is a multimeter? A multimeter is actually an instrument that can measure different quantities. For example, a basic multimeter can measure the voltage across any particular component. It can also behave as an ammeter, which means it can measure current that is flowing through a part of a circuit, and it also allows us to measure the resistance. For example, it can behave as an ohm meter. So let us now bring our multimeter. Let us see where it is. Yes, you can guess that it should be present on the right hand side of the window here. Why? Because this is the place where we have placed all of our instruments. Remember, we made this instruments toolbar appear by pressing this button here. Okay guys, so now we have this toolbar, and the first button on the top is for the multimeter. Let me click on it. I will click on multimeter and I can see that the mouse pointer has changed. I will place it somewhere here, for example, because my intention is to measure the voltage across the resistor R1. In order to measure the voltage across R1, I will have to connect my multimeter in parallel with the resistor. Okay, so I will click on one of the terminal of the multimeter, which happens to be the positive terminal. If you can see carefully, this terminal is the positive terminal and the second terminal on the right hand side of the multimeter is the negative terminal. Anyways, I will click on the positive terminal and I will bring the wire here. I will click on the negative terminal of the multimeter and I will connect it like this.